Hello and welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and see what we can get into. We're going to do a little bit of ladies' room lines, open lines. This was in 1995, July 21st, 1995. Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Secondary time. Coast to Coast AM on July 21st, 1995. From the high desert and the great American Southwest. Good morning, or good evening, whatever the case may be, and welcome to the largest overnight talk radio program in America, maybe the largest of any kind in America. 192 days long. It really gets stronger. We'll be able to Mark 2. Hi, everybody. This is Coast to Coast AM. Actually, lots of coasts. The evening of the Caribbean to the North Pole and the South America. That's instead of about how much I've talked about. All right, it's Friday night, Saturday morning, so anything goes. You guys name it, we'll do it. I do have a few thoughts on a few things. Coffee, of course, remains in the top of the news, and they had a big meeting in London yesterday. And so tonight, but we have another threat from NATO. Earlier in the day, NATO met in Europe. Actually, NATO and the Russians, and they were there. When the meeting ended, President Clinton found out and said the NATO others had reached agreement. And then right behind him came the Russian representative who said they have not agreed. Now, I guess the president meant everybody but Russia, you see, agreed. The Russians more or less on the side of the Serbs, so they're not agreeing heavy airspace against the Serbs. NATO's threat is the latest. This is NATO threat number 94. Actually, I don't know if that's true, but there's been a lot of them. Leave the last safe haven, Gorashka, alone, or else. The or else would appear to be a bombing campaign. The U.S. wants, despite Russian objectives, and these are the Russian, or the French and the British also are going along with us. The Bosnian Muslims say, not enough. And can you blame them? We've promised more or less protection for them, named the safe havens. And now we are down to counted one safe haven. They're not even going to call Sarajevo safe haven. The Serbs are openly defying, of course, the latest threat, saying, well, look, we can open two fronts if we need to. One against the continuing one, actually, against the Muslims, and the international community will not be a problem. So we can open two fronts. At any rate, the meeting in London arguably was not a success. Americans had wanted complete agreement. They didn't get it. The intensity of the airstrikes and the scope, in other words, they're going to be limited to Gorashka, not to include Sarajevo. So the threat now is, don't you take this last safe area. Yes, we know you've taken all the others, but don't you take this one. If you do, we're going to bomb. So the Allies, NATO, will now send a messenger to the Serbs with the latest threat, which they no doubt will put on a pile of previous threats. The Allies will meet tomorrow to act on the threat. Now, our president said, well, it was a really good deal. This was a good meeting. And that attacks could actually begin as soon as tomorrow. Soon to be today. As a matter of fact, they issued some sort of statement about it's going to be bad news for them. If they begin massing to attack Gorashka, bad news. We're going to really hit them hard. Bob Dole's comment on the meeting was, quote, it seems the London meeting was a disappointment. Another dazzling display of ducking the problem, end quote. Oh my. Administration officials say this is different than previous ones, but they do admit that it's going to be lights out for the UN if this fails. Now, you'd think a statement like that would really encourage the Serbs. In other words, we're going to make one last try at protecting a safe area. But if it fails, that's it, boy, the UN's out. Now, where does that serve up the motivation to the Serbs? Anyway, what do you think the UN will do? Will they indeed strike? Will the strikes be effective? Will the Serbs shake and rattle when they get this warning? When the little UN messenger, probably in a little blue UN helmet, runs in with this latest threat. Actually, the threat, frankly, is more from NATO than it is for. As a matter of fact, a lot of the UN is being cut out. NATO is not happy with the UN. And can you blame them? Who is? Anyway, they're trying to get UN personnel the hell out of the way. So if the bombing does begin, if, I said, they won't be able to take blue helmeted people and chain them to targets. So that is the present sad state of affairs. I thought that the Dateline, I think it was a Dateline NBC program earlier tonight, had a story worthy of our discussion. There was a crime, California, a terrible crime. A man was running a gun store. I think he was 58 years old, and that was his business. He had a family, and his business store. Well, a couple of little black kids. Well, one a kid, one an adult. Team came in, and they were intent on robbing the guy. Well, they ended up beating him to death, took a pipe, and just beat this guy to death. The bad guys, kids, whatever, one adult, got life in jail, no possibility of parole. The other one, a juvenile, got the max sentence, basically to be held in juvenile custody until he's 21 years of age. The surviving widow is in desperate financial straits. She probably loses the house and has already lost her husband. They showed a court scene where she said, you know, here was my husband, showed a portrait picture of him. Said, here he is now, and threw a box of ashes. This was, you know, at the sentencing, and threw a box of ashes down on the table. Anyway, the widow is now suing the parents of both families, of the juvenile and of the adult, in prison for life. She will receive some help from California's victim fund. But she's going beyond that, and she's suing the parents of both families. They say, not fair. We didn't do it. It was our child. It's going to ruin us. We'll lose our house. We'll lose everything we've got. We got a $250,000 judgment for one of the kids. Now, that was touching. He went on saying, oh, we have to rip my whole life to pay this off. And well, who cares? But the question is about the family. The families, both in this case, both say they'll be ruined. And as a matter of fact, to add to the whole mess, there is now a bill on the California governor's desk, which I'll bet he signs, that would even remove the requirement to sue. In other words, if your pupil progeny goes out and does something awful, you, as a parent, could be paying for it the rest of your natural life. You can lose what you have. And I wonder how people feel about that. Maybe a little inducement to more parental responsibility, or unfair. What do you think? was a little shocking. I mean, on the one hand, parents are in a way responsible for what their children do, but by the time they get to be teens, you're not always in control. I mean, should they be able to sue you and virtually take everything you got for what your child does? That's what's going on. And that's law. It's got to be signed here in California. And it doesn't matter whether it is or not. There can be civil suits, and indeed she is suing civilly. Affirmative action still in the news. That thing between the governor and Jesse yesterday really stirred it up. UC Board of Regents, of course, voting late last night, and all affirmative action. What will the loss of race and gender preference mean? Well, about half of this year's class was chosen because of gender or race. Jesse Jackson, in kind of a funk about the whole thing, said, "Why America's educational system has been hijacked." So do you think the UC Board of Regents did the right thing? I do. Affirmative action either is or isn't. The president, of course, the other day saying that we should end it, we should mend it. Now that's silliness. Because you either have affirmative action or you don't. And affirmative action to me has to mean preferences, racism, quotas, some yardstick by which to measure whether you are affirmatively acting. Right? There must be a yardstick to determine if there is action going on. That's why they call it affirmative action. So that's still a big firestorm going on. Very little news coming out of the Waco trial. All I can give you tonight is that yesterday, Lloyd Bentsen, the former Treasury Secretary, you'll recall, during the Waco days, had to go in front of the committee and admit very poor coordination. In fact, imagine this. Lloyd Bentsen said he wasn't even told of the initial attack on the compound until hours after it was well underway. The Secretary of the Treasury, the boss of the ATF, wasn't told the raid was even underway until several hours after it was gone. Do you believe that? I'm not so sure I believe that. And any more than I really believe that George Bush had very, quote, minimal information on Iran-Contra. Come on. Sure he did. An old CIA guy, he knew what was going on. And old Lloyd Bentsen, he must have known about the attack on Waco too. But he went in front of the committee yesterday and said he didn't even know about it. Not me, not until just hours after it was underway. Poor communication. Some rather startling new allegations on the Good Old Boys Picnic, the ATF annual get-together. These latest allegations are of rape, and drug use. Rape and drug use at a BATF picnic. Okay. The drug use. It says Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And I guess they had all of them there, huh? Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and maybe a little bit of fodder for the DEA guys. That's an amazing story, isn't it? Sad, but amazing. Spending cuts. The Senate has passed the $16 billion in spending cuts. But you recall the president balked, and so now they have added $7 billion in new spending. Interesting. Mostly California disaster relief. The president says you'll probably sign this one. So if you cut 16, you add 7, then you make the president happy and he signs the bill. Okay. I've got a little information on the Waco hearings, days 1 and days too, with regard to the amount of coverage given to the Waco hearings by the various networks, and I thought you might be interested. ABC had 2 stories, average length 4 minutes and 45 seconds in total. CBS had 2 stories, 4 minutes, 30 seconds. NBC had 2 stories, 3 minutes, 40 seconds. And PBS had 4 stories, 15 minutes, and 30 seconds. The New York Times devoted 5 stories, the Washington Post 5, USA Today 5. The top issues so far, with regard to the press, this is what will get you. In the Waco hearings, the NRA role in the hearings has had 10 stories. 10 stories. Political motives have had 6 stories. ATF drug nexus, 3 stories. Government non-disclosure, 2 stories. And ATF military assistance, 2 stories. So what I told you about the coverage, the national coverage of the Waco hearings is exactly true. It is weighted in favor of the ATF and the government by a long shot. I just gave you the figures and you cannot ignore them. Next couple of stories, I guess, several stories in a way about women. Women at work. Labor departments. This is pretty interesting. The number of families where both work, the man and the woman, is up 12.5%, from 74 to 94. An additional 17 million women in the workplace, now totaling 58 million American women working. A new study says, get this, 55% of working women make half or more of their family's total income. Still, they don't make as much. And they took the field, for example, of psychology. A man psychologist can expect to make, on average, about $31,000. A woman psychologist, $22,000. Women now make 76 cents to every dollar men make. And the question is why? And I'm sure that you out there, many of you have the answers. There was, I've got coverage of Susan Smith and a lot more here. I've got a lot of information on OJ. I really have too much news. But this is related to women's life. I was want to say the end as well. The late ABC show did a piece on women in basketball. And it's all extremely sad. Apparently, women don't have, or one of their biggest complaints, period, is that they do not have bathrooms. There are not bathrooms for women, or enough bathrooms for women. So, I wonder what you make out of that. Not enough bathrooms for women. They showed long, long lines for women. And women were complaining bitterly that going to events, movies and stage shows, wherever it is that women go, there are not enough women. Moreover, it takes them more time in the bathroom. Now, all of this may seem silly, but some women are getting so incensed and in a hurry that they're marching in men's rooms, which they say are empty or nearly empty. And it's a real horror. I mean, I would be horrified to be the one guy in a men's room and have a troop of ladies, or a lady or a troop of ladies come marching in, demanding to be able to use the facility alongside myself. That would bother me. So I wonder if it would bother you. Anyway, that's a little more news on women. And women out there may wish to confirm it and say, yes, it is true art, or it's a bunch of baloney, and they were just doing a kind of a story that looks interesting. I have a feeling, kind of a sneaky suspicion, that it's probably true. Susan Smith. New details. The final hours, the final days before she killed her children. First, apparently, we found out she was trying to drive off a bridge with her children. In other words, she was going to commit suicide with her children. But one of her children began to cry, so she kept going, went on to the lake, where she first released the parking brake, was going to drown herself, then pulled it back again, what they say, then released it again, then jumped out of the car. They say they're trying to argue the motive was suicide. They said Susan was dispensing sex to her husband, ex, her stepfather, her boss, and her boss's son. That she thought of suicide every day. And of course, the only question left for Susan is whether she lives or dies. That's really, frankly, about it. Whether she lives or dies. That's it. All right, folks. We're right here at the bottom of the hour. And we were up there Friday night, Saturday morning, till 8 o'clock. It's not even relevant. One of the reasons our children are stopping them in a car and rolling into the lake is obviously safe. No. The question everyone should ask is, did she know right from wrong? I believe she did. Why? Because she had an alibi, a story, already made up. This also shows premeditation. It's like a clear case, it's a great murder to me. And this, concerning Susan Smith, she was no more crazy when she killed her kids. But most people who kill in crimes, you know what I agree with that. I absolutely do agree with that. But a crime of passion is generally considered to be a mitigating circumstance, isn't it? And in these facts, they are. The thing is that the kids in the shooting, actually, was a beating. How come this is they were black kids? There's no racist connection that they were African American. I didn't remember that. How do you know that the old white man didn't take the vote? Maybe he said racist things and tried to kill them or something. I think the word no, the kids came into the gun shop to rob the white guy. Because you shouldn't talk about race when you talk about crime. That's Howard in Oakland, where there's a lot of crime. Well, there's black too. See, Howard, that's why I mentioned it. Because it's true. It's not true to mention, not racist to mention that they were black. I saw them on TV, so I saw they were black. And it's not racist, it's just simply true. The black community is well aware of it. And white kids, when they commit crimes, are mentioned also as white, many if not most times. But we live in Eau Wisconsin, 30 miles east of the Twin Cities. We're watching an hour-long, at least I think, weather special being broadcast on WCCO TV that is reporting unprecedented tornado and thunderstorm activity in Twin Cities in our area. Started around 5:30 this evening, and the storms just continue to redevelop. They have interviewed pilots who've never seen anything like this before, this far north. The storms are slow-moving and just constantly redevelop. We'll be tuning you in at about 1 a.m., at which time the storms are predicted to be in our area. Yes, we used to listen to you on KEX, Portland, West Central Wisconsin. Picked you up a while on WOAI, all the way from San Antonio, and WTMJ in Milwaukee, and wonderfully now from KSTP in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Well, let me tell you something. Our network took some hits earlier tonight up in the Oregon area. They have vicious storms going on. Hail, lightning. The weather continues to be a very, very big story. And something's going on with the weather. I don't care. I'm saying it. I'm not shying away from it. Something's going on. Like with the geologic activity, which, by the way, I also want to mention, it's been very quiet, nervously quiet, up in Northern California for too long now. And that's all I'll say about that. The weather, though, something's wrong with the weather. Really wrong. So I agree with the faxer from Wisconsin. And they had it so bad up in the network, we uplink on what's called KU band. Actually, we downlink on C-band, uplink on K-band. K-band is a very high frequency, and it is affected when you have a density of rain. They had marble-sized raindrops, I'm told, to the degree the network could not get its signal up to satellite. It simply could not get through the density of the raindrops. Something's going on with the weather. So, I've got more, but I will hold it. Are you ready? East of the Rockies, you're first up this morning on the air. Hi.
Hi. Hello?
Yes, turn your radio off and tell us where you are.
I am in Wisconsin.
Kenosha. Right.
Yes, and I have lived in northern Wisconsin, and this weather is not unusual.
It's not unusual. Even after what you heard that lady from Wisconsin saying that, that's you. So you get lots of big storms like that in Wisconsin. Well, this lady here at Virgin Pilots, so they can see their flight.
And they always said that the tornado came through there, so we called the whole area. And then we have a couple of things down here in the box. I don't think it's unusual, but what I want to tell you about tonight is it's usually 2020.
Which part?
About the Mexican hitting all kinds of aids in the United States and being able to cross over the border, pick up their check.
No, I'm very well familiar with the story.
What made me,
Well, that's just not news. That's been going on for a long time. Sure, they can do all kinds of things. They can cross the border and have their baby, and as long as that baby is born on U.S. soil, and my understanding is that at L.A. County, 65%, they then are automatically American citizens, entitled to everything a citizen can get. Moreover, when they get to be 21, they can bring mom and dad and sisters, brothers, grandfathers into the U.S. Documents, no problem. $150, and you can be documented documented 6 ways from Sunday. West of the Rockies, whoops, you would have been on the air. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Good morning. Hello? Well, I can barely hear you. Yes, that's me. Yes. All right, well, I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to get that radio turned off, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, where are you?
I'm in Missouri.
Missouri, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah, you
say-
still got your radio on, sir.
hold on.
No, I don't think so. Sorry about that. We'll stir it up once, and I'll wait once, but not twice. When you get on the air, turn your radio off. I know it makes me seem like a cruel, ruthless dictator, but I guess I am. That's the way it's going to be. Turn your radio off. And so if I say turn the radio off, and you say okay, and I wait, and then the radio's still on again, and you have to turn it down twice, I mean, you must have a very unusual radio. That volume must just jump right back up by itself. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello. Oh my God, I'm on the air. I've been calling forever. I cannot ever get through. Sprinkle on my name. That's not true, Eric, because here you are. Yeah. A lot of employees would get them to yes, I think they ought to take their parents, put them in jail with the kids forever. Take their parents' belongings, if there's grandparents' wives, put them in jail too and take their belongings too. I have never seen anything so sick in my entire life. A robbery beating someone man to death with a iron pipe, I don't care what. Yeah, here this guy calls up and says it's racist to observe that they were black kids. Yeah, and why? Probably he said something to encourage all of this to get himself killed. He probably insulted them or made a racist slur or something. Something he's got no basis of evidence for whatsoever, but he said it. Absolutely. The only thing, like when the dollar thing was going on, there was some guy going around saying dollar was a racist. I mean, the guy, what, he ate like 17 people and they're worried about that he was a racist. Really? What do you mean to you, sir? Don't remember that. Actually, I think that he gobbled people of both races. My recollection. Both races. First time caller line. You're on the air. Hello.
Hi, my name is Pat, and I'm from San Diego.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, I'm a huge fan of the show. I've been listening for a long time, and something you said tonight when I was driving home to my friend's house reminded me of something. I grew up in Alaska and went through a lot of the earthquakes, the major one that hit up there, and ever since I went through that experience, I was really young when it happened, but it would be really strange, like I'd sense like an earthquake or
Sure.
Something happening and then it would happen. And it's really funny, a couple with something you said about, Northern California being really quiet and, what you were saying about that.
Yeah, I think that's not good. In other words, the little quakes, I think, relieve the strain, and when you don't have one for a long time, it's time to start worrying.
Yeah, I know. Well, what I was going to tell you was the other night I was outside. It was an extraordinarily quiet night, and the stars were out and everything, and I was thinking to myself, I just had that sense that,
with your feeling about earthquakes, I suppose it is incumbent on me to ask you, what made you go to California?
That's a fair question. Well, actually, I lived in Anchorage for 12 years after that major one hit, and then, I went into the military, after that. And I ended up in Southern California because I was sent here by the military, but I decided to stay in San Diego because I fell in love with my husband, and, I decided to blow up the fear of the earthquake. But I, at the same time, knew that was a part of the package deal.
That's fact, yes. Well, San Diego is perhaps not as much at risk as north of the area.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I was just thinking how, I don't know, I've just been listening to the show for the last year, and I just identified with, I heard other callers call in and mention that, something's going to be happening, and I have a real strong sense that I don't think necessarily San Diego per se, but it's been a long time since 1989, that really bad one hit Northern Cal, and I don't know.
Well, I've got a strong sense that Something's about to come. I've got to run. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
You take care. That's San Diego, and I've had this sense for a while now. Sort of a pending sense of something. I don't know what it is, or whatever. But something's on the way. Mother Nature is raising her hand. Perhaps metaphorically, in the way my wife finally came in and raised that fly swatter. Some interesting developments in the O.J. trial. O.J. Simpson's attorney stopped their case in about a week and a half. Now, this comes from court transcripts released Friday in the former football star's double murder trial. It was from a sidebar conference. And I guess, I'm telling you, he said, Johnny Cochran, I'm going to finish in a week and a half. Now, he told the judge that. Now, here's the thing you're going to want to watch for. According to Los Angeles television station, KCAL, Simpson's lawyers have hired a woman defense attorney to play the part of prosecutor Marcia Clark and put the defendant through a mock cross-examination. They have hired somebody in Marcia Clark's image. I wonder if they could really get the same driving temperament of Marcia Clark to put O.J. Simpson through the paces the way they think Marcia Clark will do it. You can almost imagine the ad that most wanted in the newspaper for that one. Needed one mock prosecutor. Qualifications. I've got to be fair here. Sharp, very intellectual, bitchy, whiny, effective, aggravating, professional. She is all of those. And you have to put an ad in like that anyway. So they did it. How O.J. did is an open question. Now, somebody here said that Michael, I think it is, from Warren, says the cross-examination the skillfully trained female attorney went so badly that O.J. may have decided will not take the stand. I don't know about that. How many of you can name one of the life's serious fathers? I have a serious one earlier today, and this is going to seem very trivial to you. I work all night, so I sleep at least during a portion of the day. Well, sleep, and and you know how it is when you're asleep, but not asleep, and you're just away from you. Oh, you feel really funny. I swatted away. I suffered with this swat. It's hard to know to measure time. It seems like now. I'd whistle away. Sometimes I even hid under the covers. And then, of course, got too hot. So I came back out again. He was waiting for me. Land on my forehead. I had a nerve land on my nose. Land anywhere you wanted to. I landed on my ear. And I didn't have the strength to be awake enough to do anything about it. Finally, I called in desperation to my wife, who came in with a fly swatter and ended his miserable little life right then and there. But I really suffered for a long time. It seems like a dumb thing, but I suffered. Powerless to do anything about it. Powerless to get angry enough or be awake enough to do anything about it. And this blue fly tortured me for what seemed like hours. God, drove me nuts. Mark online, you're on the air. Hello. Hello. Goodbye. On the wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi.
Good evening, Art. How are you today?
Fine.
I want to talk about something that Kelly said earlier.
All right.
He said he was receiving a little bit of friction from the UFO community for the fact that he was being very altruistic with his statement.
Yeah, that's right.
And I find that kind of incredulous because anybody I've ever seen in the UFO community, any self-proclaimed authority, always has an 800 number, 49.95. And let me tell you, I have an 800 number. They're not cheap. They're in it for the money.
Yeah, I mean, numbers are cheap.
Yeah, but I
think I know. I mean, if you're selling something, it's a big deal. No, I thought Sam Shoney's motivations were straightforward, and maybe a little more straightforward than a lot of the people in the UFO interviews you say who are talking this or that. Of course, everybody who comes on a radio show just about his radio. Do you want to hold on? No, all right, where are you? Hello. All right, stand by. We'll be right back to you.
Graphics and reality was going to be incredible. And I guess until I see it live on CNN, ABC, NBC, and the Fox channel, looks like I've done the I'm still going to have my reservations.
However, a couple of things to bear in mind. One, these came to film that Kodak has dated as a minimum of, I think, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we've got here is not a product of today's computer generation, and really that is not a concern in this case. We have had talk for lots of people who've seen the 16 millimeter original black and white film, so it's a little different.
Well, if I was a betting man and I had $100, I put $40 down on Mr. Santos' case again, and $10 saying it's a fake, and $50 for myself. And I think, and again, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I haven't seen his film, and although the film may actually be from 47, we can't prove the date of the exposure.
Yeah.
And like I said, the ability to create incredible forgeries with technology will get better and better. So we're getting more convincing proof to convince the general populace. But again, I'll try to keep an open mind.
All right, sir, thank you. I would say, and I'm being honest with you, 90% of the faxes that I've received from people that have seen these photographs of the alleged alien abduction believe that it's real. And I want to stick my neck out too, and it's been chopped off before, so who cares? I tend to think it's real myself. I guess that's why I've been paying so much attention to this. I think it's real. I think these are real photographs. Now, or the photographs are authentically taken from the 16 millimeter film, which I think is real. If I were a betting person, I would bet the larger bit of the money on it being real. I'm saying I might not hedge it to some degree, but, and I've got my neck out a little here, I tell you, it looks real to me. It's the damnedest set of photographs I've ever seen in my life. And by the way, I said this yesterday, but I'm pretty proud of myself. I've done a lot of work on these. And I have sharpened them. I've done a lot of enhancement work. Not changing the nature of the photographs, but getting more detail out of them than was originally in them. I've done a lot of work. And so we've got a wonderful set of 5 photographs that we've been given nearly exclusive permission by Ray Santilli to publish. They're going into the newsletter. The newsletter is going to be going out and will hit your house only 2 or 3 weeks before the national release. So we've got some pretty hot stuff here. Art, I can't believe it. Racist cops on dope. He's referring to the story that the ATF racist picnic allegations now of rape, and drug use. Anyway, he says, I can't believe it. Racist cops on dope in America. I've had my suspicions, but now it's on TV, so it must be true. I think I'll go shoot myself. Signed, stupid. And this from Kathy, dear Art. Women have long been viewed as objects to be used by society. Yes, women take advantage of women too, of course. They not only are expected to be satisfied for less pay, but they often don't fight for the inequity. It's not only how men see us, it's how we see ourselves, and therefore pass the pattern on to our children. It's important to realize also that the income women bring in is often not necessary for basic survival of the family, but goes to support the excessive lifestyle that our current standard of living idealizes. How else would we be able to afford the luxuries we enjoy that are hedonistic by comparison with much of the rest of the world? And even with ourselves 20 years ago, Kathy, of course, has a very, very good point. And we've been talking about the weather, and I've got a good facts on it that argues with what the last caller from Minnesota said. She said, the weather's no different. Yes, it is, and I'll read you this facts in a moment. Wildcard Line, you're on the air.
Good morning, Art, from Copeland Way.
Hello.
Hey, the stuff about women using men's bathrooms.
Yeah.
I might be a little concerned if somebody like Betty Friedan or Bella Abzug walked in and standing next to me using the urinal the same way I do.
I'm glad you're humored by all of this. I'm not. I think that if a woman came traipsing into the men's room while I was there, I would scream.
Well, anyway, when you were talking about, and this I remember about 2 or 3 years ago, when there was a inner city minority activist, and he was talking about the problems with gun control. He was shouting about how we have to make the manufacturer of firearms accountable, how we have to make the manufacturer of ammunition accountable.
That's right.
And I was thinking what the finale to his tirade should be. We ought to make the makers of these children accountable. What I mean by that is that these people are parents of these kids who are doing this killing and this violence, and there should be responsibility and accountability of
to what degree is the question, thank you. And the story is, to briefly repeat, these 2 young thugs, black, walked into a gun store with robbery in their little heads. They ended up doing something they didn't have to do. They took a pipe and beat the guy to death. The widow is one of the kids, Punks, was given life in prison because he was over the juvenile age. The other was a juvenile. Be held until he's 21. But that's not the story in America anymore, because that's not my place. punks beat somebody to death. That's commonplace. What is not commonplace is that the surviving widow of this man has decided to sue the families of the children for everything they've done. And she's doing it. And there is a bill that would allow it to be done in California on the governor's desk right now, even going beyond allowing a civil suit, almost mandating that it occur. Go after the parents. I wonder how you all feel about that. A little bit scary on the one hand. You can argue, well then, yes, the parents ought to be responsible. It is their prodigy. They created this child. They shaped and molded this child. Or you might argue, despite the best efforts of some parents, the children will go out and commit crimes. And therefore the parents ought not be responsible for the sins of their offspring. I don't know. What do you think? Wildcard line, you're on the air.
Hello, Art.
Hello.
Yes, are you familiar with Revelations in the Bible?
The Bible. Let's see, I've heard of that. Revelations. Yes, I've heard of that.
Okay. Did it ever occur to anybody that the quickening has a lot to do with Revelations?
Well, I guess it's brushed our minds.
Okay. Well, with the quickening, there's a lot of things going on across the earth. The weather's just one of them.
It is, but listen to this, and here is a fact, dear Art. I've never been able to say this word. Weather stats don't lie. Meteorological. That's how it should be said. I have been working on a presentation, which I'll be putting, blah, 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 somebody else's show, well, who cares? As I've mentioned to you before, a book called The Survival of Civilization warned that as this interglacial cycle closed, it would be heralded by over 300 years' time of increased wind speeds, increased tornado activity, downbursts, severe cold, intense heat, hail, torrential rains, and flooding. He's tried to call me, he says, many times, but without success. So, I had a caller, or a faxer from Wisconsin, who said, basically, we live in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 70 miles east of the Twin Cities. We're watching an hour-long weather special being broadcast on WCCO TV, reporting unprecedented tornado and thunderstorm activity in the Twin Cities area. Began around 5:30 this evening, and the storms just continue to redevelop. They have interviewed pilots on the air who say they've never seen anything like it before this far north. And on and on and on. And apparently they're in the middle of them right now, and it is my observation the weather is changing. Or we're just having a very bad year, but I think arguably it is changing. It is becoming more severe. The weather, along with everything else, is going through a bit of a quickening. Art, about the ATF, what really boggles my mind about these guys is how they decide who is a threat and who's not. They claim that weapons in the hands